I'm going to ask you, help this community, help this mandala, help this monastery to be as secure as we can be, to be secure as a center, as a hub where we can train the mind, not just get people to be Buddhist. I have no interest in that at all. It will be up to you. Help us. Go to the website, go to the donate page. Help us out. And to all of those of you who have been helping us for years and years, thank you. Just feel it. Just feel it. Something happens, you have the thought process, and the feelings tend to come in between the thoughts somehow and kind of fill it out. So you still have a conceptual substrate or structure to it, but all these feelings in there are kind of becoming more and more have more strength and start to actually take over the intellectual or structural area. They might not wipe it out, but they prioritize themselves because they're so intense about this or about that. Just receive that. I'm going to use the 12 links in order to talk about this more clearly, hopefully more clearly. We'll go right to the sixth one, contact. First, there's contact. Something shows up. And then the seventh one, that we have a feeling about it. I don't like that. That's not good. That shouldn't be happening. That's all the things we add on to it. But before we even add anything onto it, it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. And the way in which we know what the feeling is we either want it, desire. Don't want it, desire. Want to be dismissive of it, desire. So there's contact, feeling, desire. Contact, feeling, and thoughts too are arising in that area. Descriptions, ideas, explanations, evaluations, judgments, concepts, and so on. Those are floating around like birds in a hailstorm. Contact, feeling, and then craving. This is a second noble truth. The reason we're suffering, the Buddha said, if we want something else, we desire. So what's being suggested, recommended here through your sitting practice of meditation and through your awareness practice in conceptual ways, interacting with Sangha, interacting with other people who are also training their mind. It's a big difference. Even if you're interacting with someone who is not training their mind, Buddhist or not, but has no mind training, the tendency to grasp onto ideas of right and wrong are just overwhelming. So contact, it shows up, it's there, comes in the room, comes in the mind stream, comes in the awareness. And then we have a feeling, positive, negative, or neutral. Might not even know what that feeling is, because feeling is only differentiated through wanting something else. The actual feeling itself is just saying, what? You're a living being. You have nerve endings. Just like a ladybug, or like a turtle, or like a dog, or like a cat, like a bird. Human being, you're a human being. Feel. Stop shutting that down with your stupid thought process. Stupid means ignorant. Ignorant thought process. It's about control. That's what is happening with our education system. Trying to separate church and state. Oh my God, what if the church got together with the state? How crazy could that be? Well, it could be real crazy if the church is about manipulating you. And I'm not just talking about theistic. I'm saying Buddhism. It's about manipulating you, controlling you. You haven't noticed. Sometimes it is amazing that the truth can actually leak through some teachers here and there. But a lot of it is about control. Try to practice Buddhist Tantra without getting permission from a Lama. It doesn't have to be an enlightened Lama. It just has to be a Lama. Control, control, control. They don't want to lose. I don't really give a damn if we lose. If it's time to lose, then let's lose. If it's time to win, then let's win. feeling, contact, feeling, and then we personalize it. We personalize it. The feeling is just finding its own form. Feeling is showing up, and it's found a human being. It's showing up in the human being. Why is it there? Dependent origination, pratitya samutpada, the fancy words for something that is extremely difficult to grok, comprehend, understand, see. Very, very difficult, because we want to immediately peel off into concepts about it and how smart we sound, because we're able to take this apart, deconstruct this, make it go this way, make it go that way, and make it look like, make it appear like we understand dependent origination. You cannot understand dependent origination in that way. You have to actually become dependent origination. It isn't even a becoming, it's just a lack of refusal to be what is your birthright. And what is your birthright? The way I see it, Tathagata Garbha, the seed of awakening, the womb of the Tathagatas, the ones who come thusly, no past, no future, just appear. Takes a lot of practice of living in enlightenment. Live in enlightenment. What the hell is enlightenment? How are you going to live in something that we don't even know what it means? We can't even particularly agree on what that even means. There will be no credential. It won't look like something. You won't know that you're living in enlightenment. If you do, then there's still a knower that doesn't know, because the knower that knows is also the knower that doesn't know. If you know, or if you know any polarity that's happening there, know or not know, know or not know, right or wrong, right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, Buddhas and sentient beings, pain and pleasure, has to be done through the awareness. You have to actually see this. And it's a kind of seeing that isn't like, oh yeah, I think I see that now. No, you won't think you see this now. You might have to go to those kinds of words like, I see this, I understand this. That may happen way before you open your big mouth about it and try to teach other people. Don't teach anybody unless you have to. Keep your mouth shut a lot. Receive, receive, receive. Receive the world, receive your children, receive your mom, your dad, receive your partner, what they're saying. No outflows. And if you have outflows, then turn it around as quick as you see it and receive the outflow. So you see, you're trying to produce something on top of something else in order to control it. Complete lack of respect for what? Confusion. If you don't respect confusion, then confusion will have its way and create more chaos, more suffering. Well, you already have the original suffering, which is life of suffering. That means you're a living being with nerve endings, suffering. But then we make it more intense, worse, by struggling with it. We go to war. We take a whole country. If we get in a position of power, we are so incredibly insane ourselves, I don't have to name anybody, that we're willing to take a whole country to war based on power and money and prestige, if you want to call it that. Happened in our country here right after the event that happened 21 years ago today that we've all been hearing about on the news, if you even watch the news. Remember what that was called? What would you call it? 9/11? And then what did that do? Instead of actually receiving that horrible thing and trying to understand deeply the nature of the human plight of all of us, we had those old white men. It's not always all white men, but this time it happened to be a bunch of old white men. They're in charge. Took us to war. Lots of people got killed. Heartbreaking thing to see. We all watched it. You couldn't stop it. There was no one there that had a fundamental understanding of the nature of human life and the nature of living and the nature of course, what the Buddha talked about 2,500 years ago, which is suffering, intense suffering. Everyone is suffering. But the ones that are attacking others cover up. They don't know they're suffering, because if you have outflows, then you cover up the feeling and the greed that was showing up in the seventh and eighth link on the chain of existence, or nidanas, or whatever you want to call it. Cover that up with war. Attack somebody. Somebody says something. It's not that they didn't do it. It's not that they didn't do it. We call it a trigger. But I would say, don't call it anything. If you say, well, you triggered me. Oh, I'm so sorry for you, poor thing. Is that sarcasm? You bet it is. Receive that. Receive that. Don't turn it around into, you triggered me. Blaming somebody. You get around me and I'll trigger you. I'll trigger you so much I won't even have any students left. That's how interested I am in you seeing your own true nature. We don't have much time. Death comes without warning. We're in a burning house. Not just here. This might be a fairly cool, safe spot temporarily. But the world is coming apart. And from the way it looks here, I don't know as a society, as humanity, if we can actually make it any too much further. It's just incredibly confused. Weather, climate, pollution, hatred, people not using the nuclear weapon, but pointing to it and say, if you do that, it's like an incredibly atomic playpen for insane people. I'm just describing something. I'm not saying what should be done about it. Oh yeah, I guess I am. You might want to train your mind before this does all come apart and you go into the elements, not understanding what just went into the elements. It's about awareness. It's not about right and wrong. You have a chance to do this, not because I'm so wonderful. It's because I'm nobody. I only have this on, so it gives me some kind of a standard where we can talk about this way, so you'll actually listen to me. So a few people will listen for a little while. This did not show up for a long, long time, decades. But it's here now. You can do this. It takes a lot of practice. There will not be a success story, because the feeling of succeeding on this path feels like failure, because the ego is slowly being eroded away or being dissolved by lack of nutrition. What is the nutrition? Being in favor of passion, aggression, and ignorance. Pushing, pulling, and shutting down. Warfare, warfare, warfare. 3 kinds. It's all basic ignorance. It's just some of it is in motion. You don't have to do that. So I'll go through it one more time. Something happens, contact. We have a feeling about it, positive, negative, neutral, or all the nuances. Something happens. Somebody said, let's make it more like a story. Somebody says something, or somebody doesn't do something that you wanted them to do, or somebody functions in a way that your projection or your understanding or the way you're receiving that contact is disrespect. They don't respect you. Or you're not getting what you want. So rather than just receive that, what a wonderful opportunity you have to see the truth yourself. You don't need me. As Trungpa Rinpoche once said, I think it was in the Myth of Freedom, you need the teacher so you can leave the teacher. So that's why I'm saying, maybe I'm driving you all away. Maybe I should. Maybe you should leave. You should either endeavor to receive what I'm saying, do something else. I'd rather have 6 students or 3. I don't need 15,000 people. Everybody doesn't need to meditate. Don't convert anybody. Just a minute. Contact, something happens. Somebody says something. Somebody does something. Somebody, or however it may show up. It may be just in your mind stream. Maybe you're just sitting there and you start to get enveloped by extreme negativity. Instead of labeling that depression, which is a way of shutting it down, you can't see what this is by naming something and calling something and analyzing something and come to stupid conclusions about this that are all about ignorance. Just don't look at it. I feel so much better now that I have my eyes closed. Might as well go take a nap. In fact, and in fiction, go take a nap. Take a rest. Something happens. We have feelings, emotions about a positive, negative, neutral. Let's say that they're negative. Negative. Instead of receiving that feeling, being responsible, not an ego, not talking about, we're not even to that thing yet. But just rising if it rises in your consciousness, I don't care if somebody stood right next to you and hit you with a ball bat. Of course, if it knocked you out, that would be different. But if somebody did something to you, it is still your feeling. It is not the attribution. It's obvious. So what? That doesn't take some kind of a genius to see that they triggered that or caused that. But you can't blame, you can, but don't blame the trigger. Be responsible for the feeling. Feel deeply. Be a human being. Listen to what the Buddha said. Life is suffering. Be grateful, you could even say. Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever. Thank you very much. I have no complaints whatsoever. Something happens. You have a feeling, negative feeling. And then we, through the grasping or the desire to have it be gone, or the desire to have it or deal with it in some way other than just do what you're are being told here to do, is just receive it. Just receive this incredible gift of a human life, precious human life. You didn't decide to come here. And if you think you did, you should talk to me at some point. I'd be happy to hear your story. You're here. We're here. Whatever you are, you think you are, is here. But also that which you haven't seen yet is here and not here at the same time. So what we do is we have the desire, and then we leave because it feels better. Fundamentally, it feels better to blame someone for how we're feeling rather than be responsible. And that is what fuels the ego. That keeps that self-centeredness going. You have to deal with it time after time, every 3 days. If you're lucky, you'll live with somebody that triggers you every day so you can learn something. Fundamentally, not learn information, but learn something deep about the nature of consciousness and about your emotions. If you don't understand this, you aren't going to be able to help anybody, because your agenda will be about appearing like you help people instead of fundamentally helping people. How do you do that? Stop the warfare here. And how do you stop it? You acknowledge that it's there, and it has a spontaneous kind of eruption that happens. Just observe that. To try to stop that, ignorance and aggression. Don't do anything with it, especially medications. I'm not saying that you personally may not need some kind of medication to anything from Wellbutrin to Prozac or anything as a course. If you need that, then use it. Something happens. Contact. We have a feeling about it. I don't like that. That doesn't feel good. You might not even say that. You might just be having that emotion. But the attribution immediately, as soon as you stop or shut down on your feelings so that you can see who caused it, that may reduce the feeling on one level, but it increases in the ego mind, it fuels the pride of I'm right, they're wrong. And then if somehow somebody turns that around on, if you run into me, if you happen to be a student of mine, and I point that out to you, then you could go right into shame, which is the other end of pride. You can't get out of, ego cannot get out of that trap. It's going to get caught because it is unreal and it's not the truth. It is imaginary. Go ahead.
Geez, I'm bowing. I was wondering, with the precious human birth, is there a difference at all between an urgency to practice and aggression around practice? Bowing.
All of that can be extremely confusing. So if you're asking for a differentiation, could you say more?
Geez, I'm bowing. I'm wondering how to practice diligently without doing so in a way that is perhaps abusive or aggressive towards myself.
Set up a form, talk to your teacher, set up a form where you can consistently have some kind of a daily practice, even if it's passing in front of your altar, if you have one, and bowing and saying, refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, teacher, whatever you want to say, just a simple thing like that, at least that much. Do that once every 3 days. That's all you can manage. More about that?
Could you say what is the importance of observing that form as opposed to the aggression of completing it?
So the aggression part is looking for results. So the just observing the form by you come into the zendo, it's time to sit, you hear the Hanan bell, you live in the monastery or anywhere on the grounds, you're going to know about that. So that's why we have this form, so that you don't have to make ego-based choices. You can it's time to do this, it's time to sit. It borders on a military approach, but it's not military because it is not enforced. There's some kind of addressing that when someone lives in a monastery and just stays away from the forms. And it's always done individually, each person. So some people relate to forms differently. Some people are more want to be here but don't want to observe the forms. So they'll come up with reasons and excuses. We all know this. Happens all the time. Go ahead.
Geez, I'm buying. When desire becomes grasping, it can feel like there's almost a relief that it's easier to grasp than to just.
That's why we do it. Yeah, it is. But it also creates creates more loops. It might be some relief or grasping onto something. Therefore, the desire is taken care of. You can use very obvious. The contact is your eyes hitting a jelly donut when you shouldn't be eating that. And then the feeling is, I want that. I love that. Years ago, I gave a talk on just eat it with your eyes. Look at it, but don't just receive it through that sense field rather than put it in your mouth and do it that way. Satiate your thirst or your hunger by grasping. Go ahead.
Geez, I'm bowing. If desire has not yet connected to grasping, it feels like there can still be some sort of misunderstanding. You've called that the awareness point between those two links.
Yes.
What is being missed when we are still just residing in desire?
You aren't missing it. The illusion that you're missing something is ego in the background, whispering around the curtain. It's not complete yet. You need to keep going.
Is that grasping? Grasping at that point?
Not quite. It's close to it though, because you're there, and if you're identifying with the ego, you don't have to get rid of ego. Just see that whispering coming from the curtain, that you can't just stay here. You have to actually get some of this. What if you do? This might be your only chance to get that jelly roll. This might be your only chance to tell that person that they need to stop doing that to me. Go ahead.
Geez, I'm bowing. What is functioning relating to our world while being wrapped up or consumed by the link of desire?
Just observe the desire and include it. Include the desire, but don't jump out of the desire into gratification. And you might have to do a lot of jumping out of that into gratification with a strong awareness practice to actually see the what I'm referring to there, to actually see that that might not be a good way of working with this. You might actually start to see the circularity. It relieves it a little bit to grasp, to run into it, to blame, but it comes right back around again. And a person who is unaware of their self-centeredness or of their greed or of being fundamentally responsible, not blame, but fundamentally responsible. It is your mind stream. In other words, when I say yours, I don't mean ego. I mean this whole consciousness complex that is not a solid, separate being. You're not separate from any human being anywhere, or any turtle, or any flamingo. Living forms. I've sometimes said it this way, and others before me have also. You're not even a human being. That's an illusion. But while we're here, let's relate to it as directly as we can, for whatever length of time we have here. More?
I'm wondering if one were to see what this is, does everything always just kind of come up to desire, and how does relativity still function, or in what sense does it function on the 12 links?
It might still come and go in that same way, and it might go for those around you. And as you work with this more and more, eventually that situation may still happen because it's dependently arisen. But the grasping, rejection, and shutting down, the three poisons, no longer hold sway. They no longer are fueling an ego, and the ego might be there, and it might not be, and you don't really care what it does, because you know it's that aspect of the consciousness is a fool, because of its greed, because of its warfare, because of its demand to be right, pride, or going the other way. I'm so terrible. I'm such a bad this or bad that. I never can get this right. This is never going to work for me. Polarities. Chisho.
Swami, extending what Chieson is asking, there is still hunger, craving for food and eating food, even after one has seen through.
Yes.
So does some basic craving still continue?
Sure. We pay attention to what's happening, just like some basic situation could happen where you walk outside the door into the backyard and you look over in the neighbor's yard, and the neighbor is over there, as I've used this example several times, abusing their dog or another person. You may have to jump the fence. Well, go around the fence. You may have to. You will know, if you're training your mind, you will know when to mind your own business and when to step into that situation, because the desire will not be self-centered. It will not be based on an individual ego, and you won't be able to tell if that's happening. So you don't even ask me the question, how do I know if it's my ego or if it's my Buddha nature? If you have to ask that question, it's ego. If it's Buddha nature, you won't have any questions. You will function. You will function directly. And if you're a monk, or if you receive this vow formally or informally, you will function out of that vow, which is to be with all things. And that thing that you're being with may be violence. But you won't be able to figure that out. You can't look and, let's see now, how long should I let the abuse go on, and see if maybe they'll stop it themselves, or maybe some other neighbor will notice and I won't have to deal with this, or this is none of my business. This is, that would be meddling for me. Don't lecture yourself about anything. And if you do start lecturing yourself, you probably should put on the brakes on everything, because then you realize you're not looking at what is there. You're looking at what you think is there, which is projection, which may have some accuracy. That person may be abusing another person, or or an animal or something. They may be doing that, but you will not see a bigger picture. When I say bigger picture, that's a very weak way of saying it, but you will not see the entirety of the situation. But if you are operating out of what you're receiving, you'll see it. And there will be no, whatever you do there will be no follow-up thoughts about, I shouldn't have done that, or no follow-up. I really took care of that, I guess, didn't I? Boy, I'm sure glad I jumped in there. It must be my Buddha nature's running. Very unlikely. Young.
Yu Hong Baoing, Back to the jelly donut example. For example, if I pick it up and I
Yes.
eat it, or I put it down, in that moment, could I, in, instead of blame and praise myself, can I bring the attention to just observe back to the intention?
The way I understand your question, yes. It just might take some practice before you have a feeling that you're not missing something. You might always feel like you're missing something. Anytime we're functioning out of awareness, and there's any scrap of ego hanging around trying to get a credential or trying to get blamed or trying to, then there's going to be that kind of confusion may still show up for a while, but it can't last. It needs to be fueled by right and wrong, by blame and praise to ourselves, to others. The minute you raise your finger to point to anybody, this is ignorance. Aggression, passion, aggression, ignorance, even if the person actually did it, even if they actually did something to you to trigger you or whatever.
Thank you, Bowing. I have one more question about when you said mind your own business. If a child, for example, her intention is to try to help others, even though at the moment she forgot what she's supposed to do. So as an adult, what should I do? My children, Bowing.
Yeah, I wouldn't do much. You might share how that looks to you, but not as a correction. You might share that, and of course you're talking about Ellie, so I have an idea what I recognize her kind of energy. She's going to be fine. Train your mind. She'll be fine. You just need to make sure she's safe. So that kind of spinning of what is she, 8 now or 9?
8.
8. So that kind of spinning around will run its course. It needs to. She's a baby, so you can allow her to do. But if she steps over the so-called line, you can also stop her. I mean, if something becomes harmful to her, harmful to you, harmful to Abe or to anyone else in the family, step right in. No excuses, no explanation. Just stop. Stop. That kind of a halting will probably show up as a correction, but it doesn't matter. Because the important thing is to make sure no one gets harmed. So you do that, but don't explain. Don't get into philosophy with an 8-year-old. You'll lose.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Very good. Junchu.
Junchu Bowing. There is a question from Liam in UP.
Okay.
Can you please suggest steps toward becoming a Buddhist monk and leaving it all behind for a young man? I don't know where to start. Bowing.
Well, I'm a Buddhist monk and I haven't left anything behind. In fact, I got more stuff than I've ever had. I have a whole house full of stuff. There's no standard to live up to. You get to be who you are. If your understanding is at all aligned with this old man here, this old monk, you don't have to get rid of anything, including your ego. So if you want to head this direction as a monk, then talk to Chiezan. Isn't that right? Yeah, he'll tell you a bunch of stuff. Probably scare you away. That's his job. I don't want anyone here receiving vows unless they're really ready for this. If I understood your question correctly, I may have missed the whole thing. So if I did, take another shot at it.
He does have a second question.
Okay.
When practicing Zazen and I notice a thought, when just observing that situation in the mind stream, am I possibly unraveling karma?
I wouldn't get too fancy. Probably not. Might be developing more karma. I mean, anytime you do anything, more happens. It's kind of like playing golf. Chisho can tell you about that. So you're doing fine. The most important thing to do is just keep going. Just return to the wall, get to that wall as much as you can. If you can sit a couple of block sits a week, 4 hours at a time, do that. Try to sit at least an hour or more every day. And don't add, subtract, or divide. And if you do, just watch it. Don't correct it. Yes.
How do I just feel what's arising if the concept feels so quick that I don't even see the feeling?
But just the way you described it tells me that you're looking at it, but it's just quick. It's just like a butterfly goes by. So you're already aware that that's happening. So what will happen though is when you see that, you'll leave what's happening and go into failure. You haven't failed. You're looking at it. Your net isn't quick enough. If you want to use that kind of an image, you just haven't got it. But you're noticing that something is happening very quickly that is interfering. You follow me? Don't lie to me. That's an even bigger lie. You just told me about, repeat your question. You remember exactly what you said.
How do I just feel what's arising if the concept happens so quickly that I don't even see the feeling?
Just observe that. Again, you're seeing, but you're abandoning that for the negativity if it happens too quick. No, it doesn't. It's exactly the right speed. Why? You're seeing it. You're actually seeing it, but it's not time to do anything with it. In fact, it will never be time to do anything with it. It's always awareness. Any events that come out of awareness are not grasping. They're just dependently risen. Your hand eventually becomes dependent origination. There's no purpose, even though you're reaching for a jelly donut. You are the Dharma. And it's not a bragging point. It's like, oh, so wonderful. I used to be an ordinary, everyday schmuck who didn't know anything and was confused, and now I'm the Dharma. No, you'll have no credential. It's worse than that. Better than that because you're liberated. It's worse than that because you still have to deal with suffering. The third noble truth is correct because of the people that were being taught. You had to say it that way. But from the ultimate point of view, nothing goes away. Nothing appears. Go ahead.
It seems like when that feeling arises, I can't help but either point the finger or shut down. How can I do nothing with the feeling if I'm always doing something with the feeling?
Just watch that you're doing something with a feeling, and don't add on the commentary, I can't do anything with it because. Just watch yourself shut down. Nothing extra. Just watch yourself blame. That's what you're saying. Just, nothing else. Just watch that. No follow-up thoughts. I have a right to do this. He did this. He did that. They did this. This happened. That happened. Look at the stories. If you can, don't try to stop the actual shutting down or the actual blaming, but watch the follow-up stories first. Start with the leading edge of it. Don't start with a whale. Start with the minnows. Start with the little areas. Work with those first. Just draw back. It's called renunciation. This is a path of the Bodhisattva. It's to save all beings by first save yourself from the three poisons and from this incredible vast realm we call existence.
What is just functioning when I'm doing something with what's arising?
Observing it. Observe so that which you're observing actually is not separating itself from awareness to become right or wrong or should be or shouldn't be. Just be responsible for it. The ability to respond, not blame. Blame that's the one that's somebody's wrong because they did this. And it's not that people aren't relatively causing things, but all of the karma behind that person, the lifetime, the moments, the hours in the 1930s, in the 1950s, and all the hours and the days that have gone by, we can't even remember them. You don't know what you did on Thursday, the 15th of December in 1993, do you? Were you alive then? How old were you? 3, you remember that. So progress. We can't really, you can't remember what you forgot. You have a better memory than most people. So the downside of that is you're not forgetting too much, but you're still forgetting a lot. So that's why it's so important to just be here. You don't have to remember anything to be here. There is no past and future. That's an illusion. There is no tomorrow. There is no yesterday, as it says in the Sins and Ming. Doesn't it say something like that? Can you quote the last line? Where's Senchu when I need her?
Yeah, since for in it there is no today, there is no tomorrow, no yesterday.
Isn't it?
For in the truth, there's
Yeah, they don't. They're good. Ego uses those things. Did you have one? Go ahead.
Just feel it, just receive. Seem like it's driven by the ego at this stage in the path.
Doesn't matter. Ego's unreal.
So what do we do when we notice that we're choosing to just feel?
Doesn't matter. That really does not matter. I follow your question, and I also know who's asking it. But just keep going. There's nothing to fix, nothing to correct.
Is there anything to see?
Not much. But what you will see will eventually, instead of looking like something else, it'll start to be mirror-like. It will start to reflect that which is looking at it. Consciousness always finds its own form. As long as there's living beings, that's going to be the truth.
Divine. What do you mean by consciousness always finds its own form when we are looking at our ego and its choosing?
But you're aware that's choosing. And when the choosing that people do that have no mind training are lost in right and wrong and lost in choosing, making the right choices and all of that, they don't realize that there is no chooser. They're still operating, or still reinforcing that. You have an indication or an understanding based on your study and based on being a monk that there really is no solid being back there choosing anything, but there's the illusion that something is choosing. Just watch, just observe. You're going up the side of a mountain. Don't stop, keep going. More? Yoka.
Yoka bowing, when you responded to Juzan, you said look at the little things.
Yeah.
Are the little things feelings?
Could be anything, just the parts of it, just the little commentaries, rather than try to stop something. Just look at what is shoring that up or building that up, and the attributions that come along that make it feel like we're not getting anywhere because we're outnumbered by all these lemmings. Aware of that's what's important, is not to get rid of them. Get rid of nothing. See it, so that eventually, you'd say eventually, you return to your true nature. Sorry I wasted all of your time. Yuhong.
Yuhong Baoying, I have a follow-up question about Yuzan's question. So you said doing nothing, or he said doing nothing. Can I look at turning nothing into aspiration instead of spiritual materialism? Bowing.
Yes, the aspiration needs to be an intention. I intend to see what this is, no matter what. And since you have aligned yourself with this teacher and with this particular way of presenting the Buddha's Dharma, and this tiny community, I would say it's pretty small, a few dozen people, since that's all you have to do is intend. You don't have to accomplish or succeed. Just intend. Return to the wall. Return to the 3 jewels over and over and over again. You're a young woman. Keep doing this the rest of your life.
Yuhong if I notice that the achieving energy, you said that the intention just observe. So if I notice that the could be masculine and grasping energy overflow versus just look at intention, what should I do?
So you're describing awareness. You're putting yourself in a fork in the road of what should I do? And there's no fork in that road. Those are both the same. They just look different. Continue to look at that and intend to see what's true. Look into it yourself, your own awareness, through your own mind training, through sitting down, facing a wall and watching what moves, watching what moves, watching what moves, watching the thoughts, watching the emotions without interfering, without explaining, without anything at all other than just receive. You're already doing what you need to do. That question is a good question. And I would just say, that's not a fork in the road. It just looks like it. That's ego language. It wants to divide, because by dividing, then it gets to be part of one of those directions, making the right choices. There are no right choices. I'm not saying that there isn't something going on there relatively. Of course, there are choices that are going to be more healthy for you and choices that are not going to be so helpful. So that is true. But when we cling to those and use those to manipulate ourselves and our world and our family and our community, that's when it goes around in circles. I'll take one final question and
Thank
then
you.
You're welcome. Final question. Junchu?
There's a question from Naveed.
Naveed?
When we touch and go space, do we at some point merge with space?
There's a lot of baloney out there like that. And I'm not interested in, it's not that people don't talk like that, but yeah, I wouldn't worry about that, because that is so tempting for the ego to go in and usurp that situation. And then it starts to look for, I feel like I'm merging with space. You're not going to feel fancy at all. It's ordinary. Kamo Yeshepa is a Tibetan. Ordinary mind. Nothing special, as Charlotte Joko Beck said in the title of her book on meditation. Nothing special. Ordinary. So, Naveed, don't merge with anything. Train your mind. Sit down, hold still, look at the wall, look at the wall. Do this from now on. And some of it depends on, in that area, it might depend on how long you've been meditating. If you've been practicing Shikantaza, which is eyes open, sit down, hold still. We've never actually talked before, and I know you're on. At least I think you're still there. Further question? Okay, very good.